Welcome to the Cyber Resilience panel of the 2021 SMART4SEA event. In this panel, we want to be talking about cyber resilience. Cyber has been the new normal due to the pandemic. In fact, actually, the pandemic has reshaped the cyber threat landscape around the globe, as well as the maritime industry. 2021 signals a new era of cybersecurity from a regulatory perspective, as we have the IMO legislation kicking in, and cyber awareness is an issue across the industry. In this panel, we will be discussing what sort of implications should be expected with respect to cyber resilience, any lessons to be learned from other industries, cyber regulation, the regulatory regime and what we should expect towards regulation, self-regulation, and best practices, and how we may enhance as an industry the cyber awareness for the seafarers and those across stakeholders across the industry. In this panel, we are joined by Simon Fotakis. Simon is the Chief Technology Officer of Tototheo. Olga Karali. Olga is the Business Development Manager for DNVGL. John Wilson, who is working with loss prevention and technical services in Asia, based in Hong Kong with the American Club. And last but not least, Derek Rose, who is the Deputy Chief Information Officer and Group Head of IT for V Group. I would like to welcome you all in this panel, and I would like to start right away with the presentations we have with Simon. Simon, the floor is yours. You have to share your screen and let's say, show us what you have.
Hello, and thank you for the invitation to join you on this panel and to offer a few thoughts. I'm Simon Fotakis, the CTO of Tototheo Maritime. As you probably know, Tototheo Maritime is a company focused on advanced technologies and services within the shipping and maritime sectors. We're here offering shipping companies the opportunity to transform and become a competitive as digitalization tools become more commonplace in the industry. But while there are major benefits to be realized by adopting technologies such as software as a service, bring your own device, public cloud, Internet of Things, data-focused tools, analytical programs to improve efficiency, or tools to help with digitalization and paperwork, we mostly neglect that we're increasing the attack surface in parallel, and all these services, no matter what, need protection. Nowadays, there are reports of the impact of cyber attacks almost daily. What I want to do today is spend a few minutes to reassure you that while cybersecurity may be seen as an arms race, where the enemy seems to get bigger, better, and craftier, we also have the opportunity to do the same, technology and habits alike. I have spent many years in the IT world, a world where change is the constant. We have seen a rapid transformation of technological capabilities in recent years. The digital technology industry's developed new tools that constantly evolve. Faster chips and processing have led to more data being crunched. Big data is an example. Faster communication speeds, like optical networks, have led to increased data throughput. This evolution has promoted near real-time analysis, improved industrial sensors, have empowered more data samples to be collated and more data to be stored. In short, with industrial IT systems, we can get more data, send more data, analyze more data, and therefore make much more intelligent decisions. Now, on top of that flood of information is the risk of becoming infected or breached. And good IT security practices are analogous to washing your hands, social distancing, and using disinfectant gel, which is today's reality. Don't use USB sticks. Be careful which programs and files you download. Instruct teams to be aware of security risks. Have the right solutions to check for viruses. These are just some of the mitigation techniques today. And this oblique reference to the virus that has led to the pandemic in society is not flippant. A recent report by PwC showed how mainstream corporations have shifted cybersecurity strategies due to COVID-19 and the increased focus on digitalization. This is leading to increased spending on cybersecurity with a strong focus on workforce mobility. Please bear in mind that shipping is an integral part of many a company's supply, logistics, or transport chains. Cargo owners are increasingly asking for more data from these chains as they seek more profit, and stakeholders are increasingly concerned about sustainability. To put it bluntly, you and your organization may be foolish enough not to take cybersecurity seriously, but your clients and partners, they most likely will. And just like with curbing the spread of any virus, they may choose not to work as closely with you to minimize the risk of contagion. This is corporate distancing, which you do not want. You do not want to be distanced from clients because of your shortfalls in due care and diligence against cyber threats. Digitalization has proven itself a resilient tool during the pandemic. Ship owners and managers can still access and share data. They can run their vessels as well as they ever could. In fact, even better. Proper cybersecurity enables that to continue. Companies need to take it seriously and to assure clients that they do. Secure data chains, the type many cargo owners and ship managers need to work with, are an integral part of today's workflow. And all partners involved in the chain need to be able to trust it. There are projects that work on port efficiencies, for example, enabling just-in-time operations, arrival of vessels, effective flows through and out of port. Such activities involve many different actors that need to share information in a timely manner to be able to create that efficiency. Security enables trust, and trust will lead to more data and effective decision making. But as we observe this data flow, as we see the onset of more sophisticated systems, even as we experience artificial intelligence, machine learning, and many different algorithms able to resolve different challenges with improved data analysis, we need to become equally mindful of how data can be legally stolen, modified, or denied access to. In the USA, for example, I read that personal data stolen from healthcare centers in the country can sell on the dark web for up to $1,000 each, or that there are databases of blue chip companies and e-commerce giants available for millions of dollars. This is speaking from personal experience. McKinsey noted that the boards of financial service companies are raising levels of concern as they push digital experiences for customers. As I said before, all companies need trusted partners to demonstrate that they themselves can be trusted partners. They need to illustrate how they identify and manage risk. All ship owners and managers, as well as the technology companies that support them in their journey, need to be fully cognizant of their cyber security, of the cyber risk management. And that brings me to my final point. In order to manage risk, companies need tools to be able to perform a risk assessment and implement effective risk controls. There is no point building a castle if you do not station guards on the castle walls. The number of cyber attacks enterprise IT systems are experiencing is alarming, but even more so alarming is how many organizations, even today, fail to realize that they've had a breach and information stolen. Thus, while we have the reality of virus attacks in both biological and cyber forms, we also have access to the tools needed to defend effectively and minimize risk. We know viruses mutate and the attack patterns change frequently, but so can the tools to fight back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much. Let's proceed with Olga. Olga, the floor is yours.
Okay, we'll start. Maritime cybersecurity and digital tools. My name is Olga Karali, and I work for DNVGL at the Business Development Department here in Piraeus. As we all know, digitalization and connectivity in shipping industry, but not only in shipping industry, open up new opportunities, but at the same time introduces unknown risk with potential consequences towards both safety first for vessels and then finance. Pirates were always there and a risk to our shipping industry. From the Vikings, our Norwegian ancestors, to the pirates of the Caribbean, to the recent threat of pirate activity, especially in certain areas of the world, like the Horn of Africa. And here we are today with a new type of piracy, the cyber piracy. The rapid digital transformation and connectivity in shipping also introduce new threats, which can remotely attack your ships and potentially gain access of the control of the ship. That's why we believe cybersecurity is essential. At the same time, we have more complexity of ships, which has been increased. We have less crew on board, but at the same time, more demand for software and automation and interconnectivity between ships and ships systems, but also between ships and onshore, and more remote connection. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic at the same time has accelerated even more the broad adoption of digital solutions. And the exposure to cyber threats has increased, and we have seen a rapid growth, not only in number of cyber attacks, but the complexity of cyber attacks as well. As a result, safety in maritime and offshore shipping today heavily depends on cyber systems. We will see, let's see the two parts of cyber systems that heavily impacted ships operation. They are classified as either information technology, standard information systems, and operational and control systems, operational technology. The IT technologies, the IT networks, the emails we have at the office, all the systems and software that we are working. And when we are exposed, these systems are exposed, the risk is mainly finance and reputation. It is quite a mature industry, this, and with established procedures, technology, and training, using also at the same time information security management systems, at least onshore. The operational technology, OT, is the operational control systems on board that keeps the vessel sailing. When this industry is less mature, definitely, when it comes to cybersecurity, and an attack on board these systems may jeopardize vessels' crew and safety, and the environment as well. The main drivers for cybersecurity in maritimes are at the present three: incidents, regulations, and digitalization. We have a growing number of cybersecurity incidents, little transparency, limited transparency, and experience sharing, which indicates a large number of unrecorded events. That comes because companies sometimes hesitate to share, but sometimes sometimes we don't. They don't realize even that they're under attack. The major incidents are IT-based, and I will share with you the most known, the Maersk incident, which cost Maersk up to $300 million US loss. But at the same time, we have seen various other incidents related to this. Problems with GPS problems. Hackers sometimes took full control of navigation systems. We have seen an attack for 10 hours and many, many more. Then we go to regulations. We have international regulations from IMO on a global level. This is the cybersecurity is now a regular requirement for the maritime industry with this regulation, with ISM code and MSC circular 428, which came into force on 1st January 2021, and auditors will verify the implementation of these requirements, cybersecurity requirements within the safety management system at the first audit after that date. At the same time, we have national and regional, on a regional level, security requirements and federal laws and regulations that are related to cybersecurity and data protection. like is the European Union Data Protection Regulation, United States Coast Guard Guidance and Requirements, UK Code of Practice, and many others. And then we have commercial regulations, charter requirements. From January 2018, cybersecurity is also evaluated, as part of the Tanker Management Self-Assessment Scheme, TMSA number 3, and also Sea Pride for dry cargo vessels has incorporated selected cybersecurity requirements in their assessment schemes. This has financial impact definitely for shipping industry, ship owners and operators. And we have insurance coverage, usually standard insurance contracts. There is a clause, number 380, which exclude coverage of cybersecurity incidents, since this is considered as act of terrorism. All these can impact the probability of getting a charter and may lead to significant financial risk. And finally, we have digitalization, which and we understand that cybersecurity is a crucial enabler for the maritime industry and for industry to safely realize the benefits of digital transformation. We will talk about digitalization a little bit now. As an industry, but also as a class society, we see an opportunity to improve operational efficiency, reduce cost by introducing new technology, such as remote operation, performance optimization, condition-based maintenance, and digital class tools and digital class services. At the same time, in order to make this happen, we need to introduce more automation, more software, more system integration, and connectivity. And the only way to realize this in a safe manner is also to consider the cyber risk of this new technology and to introduce new safety measures. But along with the cybersecurity defenses, we want also to ensure business continuity as well. So here comes the cyber resilient, more important, and is needed more than ever. What is cyber resilience? Cyber resilience is the ability of an organization to prepare, respond, and recover when cyber attacks happen.
Olga, you have 1 minute, less than 1 minute.
Yes. Okay. We recommend, DNVG recommends to build cybersecurity resilience across 3 important pillars within your shipping company, which are process, people, technology, and access cyber risks. We have introduced our main class rules and cybersecurity class notation. Actually, we're the first class society that we ever introduced cybersecurity class notation and cybersecurity type approval for components and vessel systems. And here in this slide, we can see the correlation between the several levels of defense and in-depth concept of our class notation in relation to regulations, requirements, international requirements, class requirements and notations, and who is responsible for what. And at the same time, as an advisory, we have advisory services where we can assist owners with onboard assessment and testing, with risk assessment, with awareness training and exercises, and at the same time, assist owners to development the documentation for the safety management system. Cybersecurity, the global pandemic definitely has challenged the status quo how shipping and industry operates. Shipping industry will gradually rely more and more on technology and data and interconnectivity than today. DNVGL pioneering digital transformation of class and shipping industry will continue to move towards to digitalization, supporting ship owners with various digital tools and digital class services, and of course, rules for safe use of new technology. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Olga. And thank you for bringing up two of the weak links in cybersecurity landscape where we stand now. The one is the cyber insurance. I don't know if John has to add something on cyber insurance. The other, the under-reporting of no reporting at all of the cybersecurity incidents. John, the floor is yours. I don't know if you have anything to add on the cyber insurance and the reporting of incidents, but we are eager to hear what you have to say.
Thank you, Apo, and thank you, Simon and Olga, for your presentations. I was asked to speak on internet on board ships and shipboard connectivity. And in so doing, and when preparing this paper, I'm also going to visit the way that a P&I club, insurance company, can assist ship owners, ship charterers, ship managers in improving their cyber resilience. The topic of our panel is cyber resilience, and hopefully by the end of my talk, you'll agree that a P&I club can be a crucial element of a ship operator ability to enhance their cyber resilience. The majority of today's seafarers, they have grown up with the internet, unlike myself and most of our speakers here today. So they expect connectivity on board the ships. They expect it to the same extent that they have ashore with their families. My 9-year-old daughter was a key element in me being with you today, this evening, Hong Kong time. She helped me to set up my Zoom for this screening. I would normally use Teams. So that just goes to show you how far we have come and how normal now it is for the youth of today and our future seafarers, perhaps like my daughter, to engage with technology. She didn't hesitate the way that she pushed me aside and took over my laptop to set it up for me and to get the background that you can hopefully see and read. 9 years of age. So I really do think that that is so relevant to today, that we do have youngsters coming into the industry that are not too happy to read screeds and screeds of long legislation. They just want to quickly get to grips with the technology, and they are so good at getting to grips with it. So we have to keep things simple for them. Technology nowadays is available, and the costs of providing it are now a lot lower than they were 20 or 30 years ago. So commercial pressures, budget constraints, they're usually now not a barrier to implementation on board a ship, whereas they would have been when I was at sea, when GPS and connectivity were just starting. Enough research has been carried out to show that connectivity is actually now an essential part of safety management, and indeed the seafarers' well-being on board ships. So it should actually be accepted now as a budgetary item for a ship operator. It shouldn't be something that is an afterthought. It needs to be a key part of ship operations, accounting system, and budgetary items. The days of putting pen to paper and sending a letter via the ship's agent are a distant memory for a seafarer nowadays. Not being able to communicate in this modern age can really affect the morale on board a ship, the well-being of our seafarers. So that in turn can have a knock-on effect. That can affect the performance of a seafarer, the performance of the whole crew, their ability to focus on the job, and their ability to work safely. That in turn, from an insurance aspect, can lead to accidents, losses, and claims. So that takes us right back to the idea that we have to engage with the seafarers, we have to provide the connectivity, but we have to make sure that they're able to use it in such a way that benefits their work and lifestyle on board, not hinders it. Seafarers need to play their part. They need to embrace that they need to use the Internet of Things wisely. You know, I'm sure we've all got family members or friends that have been hacked, or they've been a victim of a dodgy email or a scam, or they've been lucky to spot it. The same hazards can appear on ships, and we need the crew to understand that these hazards are alive and well, and they're exposed to it. When we provide them with connectivity, it comes with a risk. As Simon has pointed out, risks are there, but we have got the technology to deal with it. But we need to make sure that we can connect that technology simply enough, the knowledge how to use it, simply enough for the seafarers. The problem we're facing now with interconnectivity, internet on ships, it's not an IT problem. You can't call the IT department to solve it. It's a problem of knowing how to use the system, knowing about social engineering, etc. You don't need to know how to do coding, how to program something. So that is where it can involve the crew on a very basic level. The IT department in a ship owner, of course, is very important in setting the database, helping to prepare the cyber risk management manual, helping to run the cyber risk exercises. But at the end of the day, just like with any safety management system, the crew, the seafarers, are crucial. The human element is crucial. Human element is the key cause of accidents and losses in the maritime industry. And it will follow, it will follow. By 2025, we will have more stories of incidents that have happened due to human error with a cyber connection. So that is where we have to think. We have to think ahead how we can stop our seafarers from creating a cyber human element hazard, shall we say, or not let them be exposed to the risks. Having the technology is great, but it needs to be used effectively, just like any piece of safety equipment on a ship. Regulatory requirements, they need to be simplified as much as possible. We haven't got anybody here from a flag state or the IMO, but we certainly know from our experience of having to implement regulations that they need to be simplified at the level of seafarers on board the ships. They need to be brought to a level that can be easily digested, understood, and effectively implemented without being overbearing, without creating such a huge headache for the captain and the officers, the training staff on board the ships, and of course the crew members themselves. It shouldn't just be something for a deck officer to worry about when he needs to tick a box on a checklist or answer a question on cyber that is put to him by a PSC inspector or a P&I club surveyor. When they come on board and they say, can you explain to me your cyber risk management manual? He probably will be able to. But I would want my P&I club surveyor to be going and asking the bosun or the chief cook, has he had any cyber risk training on board? Has his company explained the cyber risk hygiene protocols on board to him? This is the level we have to get to. We have to get right down to the seafarer level for it to be effective. So the P&I clubs can play their part. The P&I club offerings in cyber risk management should include training tools and literature in the language of the seafarers on board. They're going to be in English. They also need to be in the major languages of the seafarers that serve on our ships in order to be effective. The maritime industry, we recognize the importance of seafarer well-being. We have to be careful when we're providing all the connectivity to try to simulate the life ashore and their ability to keep in touch with family. We have to make sure it's a very fine balance. We have to make sure that it's a positive way of enhancing their well-being and it doesn't create more stress. That's why we have to simplify how we can help them to help us be cyber resilient. Try to simplify the complicated regulations as much as possible. But we also need to make sure that the seafarers take ownership of their responsibility. We don't want them to just turn around and say, well, this is an IT issue, call the IT department. Or, well, call the radio officer, he can figure it out. Everybody should be able to own the risk and have a basic knowledge of how they can do that and what they can do. We want everybody to be part of the solution for effective use of technology, data storage and transfer. That's what we're dealing with here. We have the equipment, we have the tools, as Simon has pointed out. We have the experts like Olga and her colleagues to help us use it. But it still needs to be adapted to suit everybody on board the ships. And the ships are thousands of miles away. They haven't got necessarily a cyber training officer on board to help them at every turn. The possible human errors in using the technology need to be identified and they need to be dealt with in a drill. We don't want it to happen in real life. So, of course, the cyber risk management requirements include having cyber risk drills. This has been alive now since January 1st, or for some companies when they have their first DOC assessment. So it's not yet live on some ships. It's not yet considered a requirement on some ships at the moment. But we do need to be practicing it. That's important. They can't wait for the first port state control inspection to see if they've done a good job. We should be holding desktop exercises. P&I clubs can help with this. I've helped to write desktop exercises for salvage scenarios. We should be holding desktop exercises for cyber scenarios. Insurance companies like the one I work for, we train our staff in effective use of information and communication technology. We do it so that it becomes an everyday part of their work culture, the company culture, everyday awareness. And we're able, as a P&I club, to leverage that experience. And we're able to introduce the experts that we use to train our staff. We're able to leverage that expertise, that contact that we've got with those companies, whereas they can now provide the same guidance to our members, the people that we insure, the ship owners and the charterers, can now take advantage of that same knowledge that our staff have benefited from. So
you're out of time, eh?
Thank you. Let me finish by on my last paragraph, Apod, thank you very much. So to wrap up here, how the insurance industry needs to embrace is everybody needs to have a basic understanding of cyber hygiene. The shipping company executives, of course, but also the personnel on board. The decisions that are made between the insurers, the brokers, and the assured, they all need to be focused around cyber resilience. And this can start here today, and with events like this that SMART4SEA are organizing, by organizing virtual training, virtual conferences, seminars, and desktop exercises, all part of a loss prevention offering by a P&I insurer. It's not rocket science, but we need to get down to simplify things. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I'm just you know, we're going to discuss it later on, but I'm wondering, because the legislation is a few lines, and the legislation is only the IMO legislation. Everything else is guidance. The legislation says you have to incorporate to the SMS. How you do it, it's your own, let's say, exercise. But I was wondering, because I don't disagree in the greater picture, that the framework that you said. You said we have to simplify requirements. Why is the industry making a little bit difficult than it is? It's only a paragraph from the IMO, a few lines. I'm gonna come back to it, and I would like to have your views on this. But I understand why you say this and what you mean by that. But I'm just wondering why we make it so difficult as an industry. Now, Derek, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
You try your best in order to satisfy John's requirements about the,
Of course, there's a lot to cover off, but it's a really interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to the debate about it. So thank you for the invite. Very quickly, my name is Derek Rose. I'm the Deputy CIO and Group Head of IT for V Group. Some of you may know V Group, but for those of you that don't, we're a global leader in ship management and marine services. And as part of that, we add value to kind of vessel operations of ship owners. So some of the services that we cover off is ship management, technical services, crew management, crew services, sort of catering, etc., supply chain, and also insurance. So we cover a large part of the kind of the vessel operations as part of our activity, and as part of that, I personally have a duty of care to our organisation, but also to our ship owners, to ensure that the cyber agenda is very much alive and recognised. And it's a journey, and it will continue to be a journey for the industry. I come from outside of maritime. I've been with V Group for 2 years, but I come from a background that's in financial services, it's in public sector, but it's also in policing as well. So we've covered a number of different threat landscapes when it came to cyber, and it's very interesting to see the commonality of some of the topics, particularly in maritime as well. So it's and a lot of it's around the people part of cyber, and you can see that kind of trending. I wanted to kind of maybe just talk about a couple of kind of topics to kind of stimulate discussion as well, and it's something that we're focusing on within V Group as well. Is that, are we ready? Are we ready as an organisation? Are we ready as an industry? But also the concept of a technical firewall versus a human firewall. It talks to some of the topics that John spoke about a second ago. So from an are we ready, cyber incidents will happen. That's a given for us at this particular stage in life and where we are within technology. And we've seen several publicised incidents within our own industry. And there's some evidence actually that the maritime industry in particular has been targeted by some organised groups. And this will come mainly in the form of targeted phishing emails, spear phishing, and it's mainly of a disruptive nature, or what we're seeing is kind of targeted financial theft as well. But of course, there's still an element of technical attacks, such as GNSS signal disruption. And it's important to ensure that the support teams and the wider organisations are in a state of readiness in the event of an incident. And that goes down to some of the preparation discussions that we've heard in the previous presentations. So a question I'm going to ask for us to think about in this session is, as a maritime industry, how ready are we? And how do we support each other during an attack? The second part I want to talk about is the technical firewall versus a human firewall. Now, I would expect that most companies will use a firewall to protect themselves from internet attacks. And traditionally, a firewall was a specialised concrete separator to prevent the spread of fire. But in the digital age, and as we know, it's a piece of technology that will sit between the bad public internet and the good internal systems. And it's programmed to recognise and block technical attacks, or importantly, it learns when something might be an attack. It recognises strange behaviour. However, social engineering attacks, phishing attacks, for example, are far more common now than traditional technical attacks. Technical attacks can be expensive to mitigate against. Doesn't mean you don't have to have preventative measures in place. It needs equipment, it needs skilled resources to manage it, but technology also isn't as good at recognising social engineering attacks for various reasons. The main attacks we've seen that affect vessels is in the form of phishing. For example, someone has clicked without stopping and thinking first. That goes back to the kind of the training side of things as well. And although it must always be there, it's not good enough to depend on antivirus software to block this. And in many cases, modern malware can successfully evade detection. Some payloads will even lie dormant for several days, weeks, months, sometimes unnoticed, waiting for that opportunistic moment to execute. And as we see threats move from the technical to targeting human vulnerabilities, some of the statistics talk about 6 to 8% now are on human vulnerabilities, opposed to the technical vulnerabilities from an exposure perspective and a targeted perspective. Question is, how can we build the ability to recognise attack into our staff? Not everybody in every organisation is able to build a large security team, myself included, but should we, or so how should we effectively build a human firewall? The last thing I just want to kind of mention is, and it plays in the discussion that John was saying, was the operational safety part of our business. Why is cyber not part of operational safety? It should be the same thing. And it should be the same behaviours that we educate, and we should drill, and we should run various exercises to make sure that the message is actually landed with our seafarers and our onshore colleagues as well. So I'll take a step back there, and I'll hand back to yourself, Apostle, and I'm happy to take any questions and open up the debate.
Okay, thank you, Derek. There are reports surfacing recently indicating that by 2025, approximately 50% of the data will be stored on the cloud. And that makes, cyber a huge priority, I would say, for the time being, because in the near future, the landscape will be totally different. Now, I would like to start with what John pointed out. I would like to ask you about the regulation. The IMO regulation, which is the only regulation we have in the industry, is a couple of lines, let's say a small paragraph, indicating more or less that you have to incorporate within your SMS. When are the, let's say, authorities are going to verify this? During the next DOC annual audit. John correctly pointed out that for some operators, this is not the time yet. The time may be within, let's say, the end of the year. We understand that. Now, we all understand, however, Olga nicely outlined a huge number of requirements that an operator may incorporate, because at some point we have the TMSA requirements, and we also have the new rights requirements. The vast majority of operators have to also incorporate these requirements in their SMS as well. So how can we simplify the requirements? Why should we, let's say, as an industry, make it a little bit harder than it is? Should we seek more best practices? So I'd like to hear from you on this range. Simon, what are your thoughts?
That's a good question. And actually, I'm going to shape my answer a little bit different to what I prepared for, based on some of the excellent feedback I've had from the rest of the panel here, actually. So I come from an e-commerce background, and e-commerce, online retail, effectively. And in order to be able to sell your products and take payments, not only do you have to be do you have to follow a certain regulation or best practices or governance, put it under the banner of governance, but you must prove that you're doing so. There must be a level of assurance. And as I've only been with the maritime sector for only 2 months, I don't wish to I don't think I'm in a mature position to comment around how complex or how simple the regulation is. I think for me, what's potentially lacking is the level of assurance. As in, you say, from what I understood from John, there's an inspection once a year, potentially, when you're a port, and that's where you can assess the level of compliance of a vessel. But for me, a vessel is very analogous to a critical infrastructure, and we're talking about protecting life at sea and so on. So I think there needs to be tighter assurance, a tighter level of assessment, potentially before the vessel is, I wouldn't say allowed to sail, but allowed to perform certain operations. So I think for me, plenty of governance out there, best practices, guidelines, regulations, all the frameworks are out there. It's how we adopt them and how we measure the effectiveness of adoption that counts.
There are a couple of things I think John would like to comment. John, I think you like to comment. Yes, please, briefly.
Yeah, well, Simon has introduced a very good idea, and First of all, let me just clarify for Simon's benefit, as he's a non-seafarer, the future isn't just where we have to rely on making sure we follow the safety management system. The cybersecurity management now needs to be a part of the safety management system, which has been in existence for 20 years or more. The safety management system is audited regularly by the flag state of the ships. So it's comforting to know that when they come on board for that audit, they're not just coming for the cyber aspect, but now they will be asking questions about the way they've incorporated cyber. First of all, they will want to see the cyber chapter in the safety management manual, and then they should be asking questions of evidence to show that you've had cyber drills, and maybe speak to a few of the crew to see if they really have been living the cyber policy, and it's not just been sitting on a shelf gathering dust in the captain's cabin. But it isn't just going to be reliant upon that inspection by the vessel's flag state. When a ship visits any port, they are at risk of having a port state control inspection. That's where a surveyor comes on board from that port to inspect the vessel, any part of the vessel. They'll be focusing on how the vessel complies with the ISM code, the safety management system, again. So it'll be interesting to see when we will have the first ship detention due to there not being cyber risk management incorporated in the safety management system. That will be a detainable aspect, which is big trouble for the ship operator. Suddenly, you can't leave on time, and it's a mad rush to sort it out. Or it may be that, yes, it's in the manual on board, but there's no evidence to show that it's been alive. That would be a deficiency which the captain then would have to rectify, perhaps not immediately, but certainly wouldn't be a detentionable action. So there is going to be that level of inspection. That is what we need to be ready for, what I touched on in my talk, that we need to, for example, have the second officer make sure that he's fully aware of the cyber risk involved with the navigation equipment on the bridge. Because if I was a port state control inspector, that's where I would be asking him. How do you update your electronic charts? How do you transfer data from this laptop to that computer? And I want to see what he's doing with that USB. Is he running a check on the USB before he downloads the data, etc.? The same in the engine room. A lot of equipment there that is connected, right? It isn't just going to involve the captain or the IT officer on board answering some questions. It needs to be specific to everybody, even down to the crew members who will have their phone with them. How do you charge that phone? Oh, you know, I can connect it up to the ECDIS, because of course we know we had a famous incident where somebody thought that he could charge his phone by connecting it to the USB on the ECDIS, and that successfully then transferred the malware on his phone onto the ECDIS and wiped out the whole chart system. Now, I know about that. It's been spoken about in many presentations, but I doubt every seafarer on every ship knows about that actual event. So that is something that we need to make sure cannot happen again. So it's possible, it's doable, Simon. As you said, it's doable. We have the technology. We just need to now be creative to be able to actively use our cyber knowledge, our cyber risk management, just like we would when we're entering a dangerous space that might not have enough oxygen. All seafarers know what you need to do. We need now to be at a level in a few years' time where every seafarer knows how to handle a USB. We're not there yet.
Let me change.
Derek's right, we're not ready.
Okay, let me change a little bit. Going back to Olga, I forget to mention earlier on, Olga mentioned in his presentation, there are class notations. Go back to what Simon asked. Someone is checking, because there are some cyber notations from the classification societies. Someone is checking some things beforehand, before ships are put into operation, and so on and so forth. I would like to ask Olga, and then go to Derek, are there any lessons to be learned from other industries? Or maybe lessons to be learned from the past? Because if I go back to what John said, I have to play the devil's advocate. I have to predict we're going to see the equal number of ships detained for cyber being the same number of ships detained for not complying with the ISM at some point. So going back, I mean, to what we said and moving forward, Olga, are there any lessons to be learned from other industries or from the past? What do you think?
Well, definitely, as we say, as I already said in my presentation, for the IT side, the technology and the infrastructure, and when it comes to cyber security, we have established procedures, and then we can learn from them. We have also the ISO EC 27000, the Information Security Management System. So when it comes to that, yes, we have, I understand, lessons learned, and we can comply and implement in our IT systems on board and ashore. When it comes to operational technology, operational systems and control, the resilience is much less. Cyber resilience is not that mature. And that is because we need to implement security barriers which fit our industry. It is not that easy. For the time being, as a ship systems, we take advantage of as we say, modern of the self-technology and connect to remote solutions, something that is already industry, not ship specific. Regarding safety management system and the new regulation that applies now, has been entered into force since the 1st January 2021. The main contribution of the resolution is to increase awareness of the topic and to get companies to assess cyber risk and implement relevant measures across all functions and on board and at shore. It is not an easy task. Implementation takes time and training. We have training the crew and offshore staff, and it is not done in one exercise, this topic. It needs continuous efforts and top management commitment, that is for sure. And at the same time, I can say there are two methods, repetition and diversity. Humans need to sort their inputs on a regular basis. We cannot train them in one go every 1 year or every 2 years. So in order to learn and to embrace a new topic, this mode is more effective than a full day online teaching or every, as I said, 1 or 2 years. And also using different methods is beneficial. We have in DNVGL, we can support, when we support our clients, we have a free of charge awareness video, e-learning, classroom training, workshops, tailor-made, cyber incident response exercises, penetration tests by ethical hackers, crew surveys and self-assessment in order to support. It's not an easy task. And it needs, as I said, commitment from the management and continuous effort. Cybersecurity awareness and crew training, in my perspective, is probably the best defense against cyber threats.
Okay, thank you. Derek, your views?
Yeah, so there's probably three areas that maybe, so I've had the benefit of coming in from outside of the maritime organisation, so I've experienced a number of different approaches to cyber in different industries, and there's a lot of commonality, if I'm honest. The three areas I'd apply would be detect, protect, and respond. Okay, so from a detection point of view, traditionally, it's technology detection, it's the firewalls that we talk about, it's the alerts that we get through our systems, etc. But we can also have human detection, and that goes through to John's point about the education of both the seafarers and our shore-based staff. And you can't dilute the value of good quality training material, and that's education, education, education. You know, and that will help with the detection, because it's in people's minds then when they're actually operating on a day-to-day basis. Don't click on that link because I don't recognise it. Why have I received an email from that person asking for an invoice payment to a different bank account from what I usually get, for example? So the human detection part of it is really important, and we can learn and continue to learn from other areas. Prevention, again, is around how do we put technology controls in place to prevent things. So we've got endpoint antivirus, for example, we've got our firewall controls, we can do various things around that, but we can also prevent by re-education and keep training people as well, and running drills. The more we run and the more we experience a simulation or a potential attack, we can prevent ourselves from actually exposing our business in many cases. And response, no better response to scenarios on board vessels are the crew members in many respects. They respond really well to work instructions, they respond really well to drill campaigns, etc. And we see that from within V Group, we run them regularly. So I think detect, prevent and respond applied across both human and technology would be one area I'd consider.
Yeah. Okay, now I have a couple of quick questions. I don't want you to make lengthy statements. My first one is about the future challenges up to 2025, let's say in the near term. What do you think will be the biggest challenge if we take out the human element issue, take out the awareness by those ashore and on board? Because as you correctly pointed out, Derek, if someone is asking a payment to a different bank account, that's not a cyber security thing, that's social engineering, that's something totally different. But again, it's a side effect of what is going on, because everything now is online, and we tend to see that in that sense. So if we take aside the awareness issue and the human element, what's the biggest challenge with respect to cybersecurity within the next 5 years? What do you think, Simon?
Well, awareness and cyber, it was a topic that I'm very big on, and I wanted to sort of deep dive a little bit, but that's okay, conscious of time, obviously. For me, in the few months of maritime, what I've experienced, what I think was going to happen is, I think the maritime industry needs to sort of, I'm going to be blunt about this, wake up and realize that information security is here to stay. And I always use the term information security because for me, cybersecurity is just a subset of information security. And cybersecurity, when we refer to cybersecurity, we're only referring to certain risks and associated controls, not the entire spectrum. For me, the maritime industry will grow in profile. Attacks will become bigger and more complex. And I'd like to get to a point sooner rather than later where the maritime industry wakes up and sees information security as an integral component of its operations, a part of its DNA, and not just a simple cost benefit exercise. Because at the moment, what I'm experiencing is that the maritime industry is following a tick in the box exercise mandated by a certain few lines of regulation, and still hell-bent on sacrificing a holistic information security approach to defending themselves versus cost, which for me is illogical because it's not like the maritime industry is short of revenue streams. So yeah, that's my view on it, and I hope it happens sooner rather than later.
Okay, Olga?
Well, what we see in the next few years, definitely, I believe that will be increase of cybersecurity regulations. I believe the IMO and flag states will increase their demands over the time as a reaction to increasing incidents, both in terms of number and consequences. What we don't have now, because it's the first global regulation for the industry, comes from IMO and for ISM safety management system, there's a lack of compulsory technical requirements. I know Ajax has released last April a new recommendation for cyber resilience, but it's still a recommendation, and we try to put them as a unified requirement. Because as I mentioned in my presentation, the cybersecurity notations are voluntarily. They are not, it's not an obligation for the owners to use these notations and to build their ships according to these notations. This will be probably, I see that the next few years increase demand from IMO and flag states regarding this, and hopefully there was from Ajax to align cyber requirements, the overall structure of the cybersecurity requirements for ships. And of course, class societies will decide by themselves how they will implement those enforced rules.
Okay, John, what do you think? What would be the biggest challenge within the next 5 years with respect to cyber?
Simon's already said it. It's going to be a wake-up call. In 5 years, we're going to realize that cyber is something that we needed to be paying attention to, and it shouldn't be a tick-the-box exercise. In 5 years, every shipping company will have been exposed to cyber risk. They may well have been exposed to a cyber crime, a breach of some sort, or an accidental cyber incident on board a ship. We say in the maritime industry that 80% of accidents on board are human error, right? I've just looked back at a presentation I prepared 2 years ago. There was a survey in 2019 by Allianz, a big insurance company, right? They reported very similar numbers on cyber accidents. 88% of cyber data breaches were caused by human error. So I know you wanted us to not talk about the human aspect. That's all I'm going to remind everybody of, that isn't going to go away. If they were to do that survey again this year or next year, hopefully it will be a little lower than 88% because some of the knowledge should have filtered down. So to finish off answering the question, we're going to be in a place where every ship operator has been exposed to either an incident, or they've had a flag state or a port state control inspection of a ship in their fleet that has identified a deficiency in the way they implement their cyber risk management, which has resulted in, at worst, a delay to the vessel, at best, a deficiency which they have to then deal with. And this isn't going to be a technical deficiency. It isn't going to be, well, it could be. It could be that they haven't got a piece of equipment on board or not correctly set up. More likely, it's going to be a human element deficiency. It's going to be a breakdown in training deficiency. It's going to be where a PSC inspector or a P&I club surveyor asks some questions of the crew, just like he will for any shipboard operation, to see if they really understand basic seafaring terminology and knowledge and procedures. And they're going to get things wrong. And that will go down as a deficiency. And that will go back to the office. So slowly, this is the good part, slowly ship operators are going to realize, as all these deficiencies start to filter down back to the office, that we need to improve our implementation. How do we do that? Simplify the training. Simplify the jargon. I hope Olga is wrong, that there's going to be more legislation. I truly feel that there's enough at the moment. We need to effectively implement what we've got. That's the response. The response isn't more regulation. The response is help the industry to effectively implement the existing regulations. You know, the experts have identified all the risk for us.
Yeah.
The regulation is pretty good, actually, because it's not too cumbersome. It's not that many pages, but that's where we're going to be. We're going to be facing a history of hits by cyber deficiencies, let's say, and insurance companies like mine can help to play a part by providing training in the language of the seafarers, providing publications in a very simple format. We call it a comic, because it relies upon visual images of seafarers doing something wrong on a ship. Very few words. You can see from the image, and that's important because this is going to be a poster on board a ship where you might have a multinational crew. You want the whole crew to see what the poster is telling you. It might show somebody moving a USB from one laptop into the radar or something like that, and everybody immediately knows what that is telling us.
Okay,
that's
Derek?
where we're going to be. We'll be at a point where we have to face the deficiencies that we've been suffering.
Okay, Derek?
Yeah, so very briefly, I think I don't disagree with any of my colleagues on the panel about what the focus. I would say focus on what matters most from an organisational perspective, and let's look at where we are in comparison to other industries, right? So if you look at, very briefly, you look at financial sector, right, as an example, 15, 20 years ago, the focus from a security perspective was physically in a bank. Bank robbers were getting in with guns to steal money. That very quickly changed within financial services because we don't see that now, but we actually see cyber criminals now stealing the same money, but in a different mechanism. The financial services industry had a big wake-up call at that time, and then they invested in the right technology and what matters most, and the right training. We're possibly at that junction, and it's ownership, it's responsibility, and the key thing is it's not somebody else's problem, it's our problem to deal with, and it's a culture approach that we need to take. So if we keep driving the agenda through forums like this and other sessions, then the message will start to land, I believe. But we can learn very, very quickly from our colleagues in different industries, I believe.
Okay. Now, the last question to wrap up the panel is asking you to identify one thing that would have either an immediate or a profound impact in order to improve the cyber resilience of the industry as we move forward. So if you could change one thing in order to improve the cyber resilience, what would it be and why? Simon. I would like to ask you to be brief, let's say in the range of 30 seconds to a minute. Simon.
Yes, thank you. Actually, as it turns out, you are about to broach on my favorite topic, which I think all of our co-panelists converge on, which is raising awareness and empowering the human element to become the human firewall, as we said. But there's a way to do this, right? And I did write a little piece because I've done some work on how we adopt behavioral sciences to help us really construct effective awareness programs. And the key takeaways for me is these 3 bullet points that I've jotted down, and why I think just raising awareness is not enough. Just mentioning that we need to raise awareness is not enough. We really need to raise awareness effectively and allow people to take action on it. So just because people are aware, it doesn't mean they care. If you try to work against human nature, you will fail. And what your people actually do and how they act upon the information they receive is much more important than the actual information that they receive or its retention. And finally, I see it everywhere. I'm sure it happens in the maritime sector. We mentioned it before. Awareness programs are approached as a tick in the box compliance exercise, i.e. at unrealistic frequencies. Basically, it all comes down to selling awareness as a product. The product in this case is behaviors, and you got to take sure that your customer, the end user, takes that behavior to the cash register, as in acts on it. And what John mentioned earlier on about big posters and so on, it touches on some of the behavior scientists. I wanted to expand a little bit more on today, but I'm conscious of time. Things like the nudge theory and the fog behavior model, which is about creating clear-cut, memorable links between a behavior and an action. Things like remembering your memorable holiday or your child's first birthday to actually doing something. So yeah, this is it for me, creating really, really effective awareness programs, meaningful awareness programs that drive action, empower people to act upon.
Okay, thank you. Olga.
I believe it's people, persons on board and on shore, and the training, continuous training. And that is, I think, the first that we have taken into account, and to focus the human element before we go further to several expensive hardware upgrades or other technical issues.
Okay.
That will take time.
All right, John.
Yes, I think we need to enact this human firewall that has been mentioned by two of our speakers today. We need to take this away from the IT officer, take this away from the CEO. We need to give ownership of cybersecurity to the seafarer and to the staff in the shipping company offices and the maritime cluster that helps the ships get from A to B. And in order to do that, we've got to have effective training. In order to do that, we've got to provide simple training tools, simple posters, as what I mentioned previously, simple 1-2-page books. Ship operators, if they haven't done it already, need to create simple checklists. We have pre-departure checklists for ships to use to make sure systems are in place on board on the bridge and in the engine room. Those checklists now, pre-departure, pre-arrival at a port, they need to include cyber, let's say, aspects, right? Is the ship cyber safe to come into this port? Is the ship cyber safe to now leave the port? And also, finally, when a new crew member joins a ship, there's a requirement that he has to have familiarization training. There's a document on board called the SOLAS training manual, which has all the information in there about the safety equipment, where he will find the lifeboat, where he will find the life raft, how does he launch the life raft, etc. That also now should incorporate the cyber hygiene aspects of the ship. How many laptops and computers are on board? How many places can you plug in a USB? Hopefully not that many. Things like this. We need to educate everybody. How do you access the Wi-Fi on board? Is there a firewall? What you should and shouldn't do with your phone when you're on board. This needs to be a part of the familiarization joining checklist to be completed within 24 hours of joining, just the same as every other safety procedure that they're expected to get to know in a short space of time when they're on board. Yeah. That would then help to bring cyber up to the same implementation level as the rest of safety awareness, and that's what's needed.
Okay. Thank you, John. Derek?
Yes, I can't disagree with anything that my colleagues have said, to be honest. All I would just caveat the training part with and make sure it's good quality training and it's engaging training. You know, we're all used to the kind of the standard PowerPoint type experience, and you die looking at this stuff and it completely goes over your head and it's glossed. So I would challenge you to say, can you remember your last compliance and ethics training versus the cyber training, the message that was delivered? If the people come back and say, and your staff come back and say, oh, I remember this particular part of the cyber training, it was really good because it was a game or it was a video or it was a program, whatever it may be, to get the message across, you're engaging a different demographic and it's slightly different to the norm. And then the second part I would say is test what you've already trained against. So if you have a campaign that talks about a phishing attempt, for example, don't click on links, you can get products in place to actually test that in a controlled manner. So if somebody inadvertently clicks on the link, it takes you straight to a training portal, for example. So you're reinforcing the message and you're actually targeting your training to specific risks that are in the market just now. So that's what I would say.
Okay, well, we have to conclude the panel. I would like to thank you all very much for the presentation and the contribution to the discussion. I would like to thank all our viewers, and I would also like to thank all our sponsors. Without them, we couldn't have these set of events. So I would like to thank you very much and trust to see you one of our future events. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you.